Hey guys, this is Mitch with Fine Point CGI, and today we're going to talk about how to create a level loading system inside of Godot. Now, this is a kind of a continuation of our Godot horror series, but it is also a standalone tutorial. So if you want to just stick around for the level loading system, you guys can and use that independently of the horror game. Or if you guys want, you can go ahead and follow all of the rest of the tutorials up to this point, and you will be to where I am inside of this scene, and you guys can have a nice level loading system with your horror game. So we're going to go through the process of building out our loading screen. We're going to talk about how to create random tips and things like that. We're going to talk about how to actually load your level and do multi-threading. We're going to talk about how to load levels from a button, or how to load levels from a door object or some kind of object in the world. We're also going to talk about how to stop your user from having input when you are loading your level, so your character's not running around while they're loading a level. And finally, we're going to talk about how to do an any key press to load your next level. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we actually need to build out our level loading screen. So we'll come in here. We're going to go to scene, new scene, and we will set that as a user interface. We'll come over here and we'll right click, add in child node. We're going to add in a panel, and we are going to make that full screen. That's going to actually block out our background. So that way, just in case we have some assets that haven't unloaded or haven't loaded properly, we can kind of just disguise them. So that way it doesn't show up a half rendered scene or something like that. And then we can come into our control node. We can double click it, control A, loading screen, providing that it lets me. There we go. And then we can right click, add a child node. Let's add in a control node. And this is basically going to be our actual text prompt. So much like a lot of games, they have a section here that says something like loading and then the name and then usually like a tip system or something like that. And we're going to also have that. So we'll right click our control node, add in a child node, and let's add in a VBox container. We're going to make it about this big, give or take, and then we're going to right click, add in a label like this, and we'll duplicate that label. Now our first label is going to be the loading label, and then here we're going to have the level name, and we'll type here loading, and or I guess in this case I'm going to cut this and say level name and then loading like that. And if we want to make some adjustments to make this look a little better, we can come into our theme overrides. We can change our font size and make it just a touch bit bigger. Something like 35 will do. Maybe 30. Now that I'm looking at it, I think maybe 30 will probably be a better value. And then we're going to duplicate that VBox container. We're going to click on our move. We're going to drag this guy down somewhere about here. We'll come in here and we'll change this to tip. And I'm going to adjust the size of this down in my theme overrides to my font size. I'm going to change something like 12. I think that might not be the right size. Let me see. We'll make it something like 20. There we go. Then we'll come into our level name and we'll change this to tip here. We'll change this from level name to tip value, and we'll change this to tip label. Just like that. And that'll give us our loading and our tip. And actually we kind of want to drag this guy down a little, get it a little bit, it's more centered, and then have our tip right here. I think that would work. And then we need to have some kind of progress bar. So we'll come in here, we're going to right click, add a child node, and type progress. You see we have two separate nodes that we can choose from. We have texture progress bar and progress bar. Texture progress bar will allow us to, put a special texture on our progress bar. But progress bar will just give us a basic progress bar. And I'm going to go with the basic progress bar because I don't really need the fancy textured, fancy one. But it's up to you guys on whichever one you want to use. So I'll add that guy in. And I'm going to click on our little anchor preset. I'm going to make it anchored to bottom wide, like so. And then I'm going to drag this up to somewhere like here. I'm going to click on our select mode here, and I'm going to pull this in so it matches with the rest of these guys. I'm going to pull this in so it's about equal. And there we go. Now, if we want to, we can always come in here and adjust anything in here that we'd like. So you can come into your theme overrides, adjust your colors, adjust your constraints, adjust the font if you want to, or the font size of the little 0%, or any of the styles. So if you actually want to change the style, you can. Now, in my case, I'm fine with the basic style because this is a basic tutorial, but if you guys want to, you can make it different colors or different textures, things like that. Now, once we have that, we can go ahead and start coding our loading system. I'm going to hit Control S to save, and you'll see it pops up, and I'm going to call it loading screen.tscn. I'm going to drop that into my UI, and I will save. Now, I'm probably going to dump this all out as a modular piece and throw it up on my GitHub so you guys can actually have it. You know, I do that with most of my modular pieces. So inventory, loading, things like that are all basically modular sections that can be used in other games. And that's basically the goal of most of the code when we do anything inside of Godot, is just to make it modular. So let's go into our loading screen. Let's right click and click attach script. We're going to call it UI/loading screen. And we will make it C#. Since this is a C# tutorial, we will hit create. Now you're going to see Visual Studio pop up, providing it feels like working today. And there it is. I was afraid it was going to be broken because sometimes it doesn't like me. So I'm glad to see it's liking me today. So first things first, let's build out a very basic load system. So the constraints of this load system is going to be simple. We want to make it so that you can load via an action, and we want to make it so that you can load via clicking a button, and we want to make it so that once the level is loaded, it's going to display a press any key to continue kind of button. And the reason why is I don't want to throw the user into the game immediately. I want to give them a chance if they got up to use the bathroom or something like that, that they're ready to play the game. So that way they're not just launched in the game and just sitting there waiting. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have a load level function. Now, the reason why I'm doing this in a function call is because when you're loading stuff asynchronously, you kind of want to keep your processing logic out of the process function here. So basically, we're going to need to use the process function to inform our loading bar. We're going to need to use it to, get like a status basically and be able to show that to the user and be able to set like our wait for input and things like that. And then we're also going to need to make a function that basically loads our level. And then we'll probably need to make a function to change our scene, right? And the reason why is because we may want to load a level, but we may not want to change the scene in case we're doing something like streaming. Or we may want to change a scene but not necessarily load a level and just clear out the level. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about when I'm going through this. So first things first, we'll say public void load level, and we'll say string, and we'll put in a path like that. And then we'll come in and we'll say, okay, we need a global reference to this path. And the reason why is because basically we're going to need to be able to pull back the status. So we'll come up here and we'll say private string path like that. And then we'll just say this dot path is equal to path like that. And then what we'll need to do is we'll need to show our loading screen. So in our case, it's just going to be show. Then we'll just check if our resource loader dot has cached path, then we'll do some stuff here, okay? Else, we're going to load our level. So we'll say resource loader dot load threaded request, and we'll pass in a path like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a value up here, a private Boolean as loading. And then we can set loading equal to true. Now, if we have our cached path, what we can do is we could just fetch that. So we can say resource loader dot load threaded get, and we'll pass in our path like that. Now, what this is going to do is it's basically going to say, hey, if we have this cached, let's just go fetch it and let's load it. If it's not cached, then we'll just do our request. Now we need to basically set up our change scene. Now changing scenes are going to be pretty simple. So what we'll do is we'll say public void change scene, and we're going to pass in a resource. So a packed scene resource like that. And what we'll do is we'll basically just say node, current node is equal to a resource.instantiate. Now, what we can do is we can actually set this as whatever object type we want. Now, the big struggle that we're going to run into is it depends on what we want to instantiate it as. So if we instantiate it as a node 3D, right, then we know that we're going to have a node 3D object. If we instantiate it as a control node, then we know that it's going to be a control node. Now, both of those guys inherit from node. So if we do a node, that's going to work pretty well for both of them. So basically, that's going to give us a lot of flexibility. So if we come in here, what we have to do now, once we have our stuff instantiated, is we need to add it as a child. So get tree dot root dot add child current node, like that. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to basically just add our stuff to our scene. Now we're going to have a problem because we've added our child, but we haven't cleaned up our scene. So we need to loop through our children and actually delete out the children that we don't need anymore. So what we'll do is we'll just come in here and say for each var item in get tree dot root dot get children, like that. And that'll pull back all of our children. Whoops, I don't need that. There we go. And then we can basically just say get tree dot root dot remove child, and we can pass in our item. And that'll basically delete it from our node. And then we can basically just say item.queueFree. Now, technically, you don't need to remove the child when you do a queue free. It should just kind of do it automatically. It's more of how I like to do it, so that's how I'm going to handle it. Now, something to note, we are actually going to delete the object we've added. So what we need to do is we need to control X, come in here and paste it, and then we're good to go. Now, we also need to delete our loading screen so we can queue free from there. So basically what we have here is a way to load our stuff and remove the stuff under our working tree. Now, something that we have to keep in mind, if we have any static nodes, so anything assigned under our, if I go grab it real quick, project settings, our auto load section right here. If we have anything loaded under our auto load, this is not protected by that. So it will delete those objects because it's part of our root object. Now, the way that we can handle this is we can do a lot of things. We can go and basically keep track of all of our auto loaded stuff. We could go in and keep track of any of our static nodes that we have. Or we can basically just be very particular about the type of nodes that we have. And what I mean by that is if we just say if item is node 3D or item is node 2D or item is control, then delete these items. And that will basically get rid of the potential of breaking our static nodes that we have. Now, this will not work if your static node is of type control or of type node 3D or node 2D. Generally speaking, I don't know why you would have a static node that is of those types. Generally speaking, they're of type node. But if you specifically want to handle that, you can. You could just get a list inside of your game manager and then basically check that list of objects. But in my case, I think this will work just fine for us, so we'll keep it like that. Now, once we have this set up, we just basically need to hook up our progress system. So we basically just need to hook up our progress little loading bar. So we can come into our process and just say if loading, then var progress is equal to a new Godot collections.array, like so. And then we'll say var status is equal to resource loader.load threaded get status, and we'll pass in our path, comma, our progress. And that's basically going to return our progress. And our progress is going to be basically an array of numbers. And basically you just need the first value of that array to get back your actual progress. So we'll just say if status is equal to our resource loader.thread load status dot in progress, then we can basically just set our progress bar. So we'll just say get node, and we'll make that a type progress bar. And I believe we named it progress bar, like that. Dot value is equal to, and we need to cast our progress as a double for the progress bar to know what we're using it for. And we'll say double progress. We'll pull back that first element and we will multiply it by 100 because the value we're going to get is 0 to 1. So we'll just multiply it by 100 to just kind of make it, 0 to 100. So basically what we're doing here is we're saying, hey, if our status is a resource loader load status in progress, so if we are in progress of loading, then we could set our progress bar value equal to double our progress multiplied by 100. So that basically will give us what our status actually is. Else, if our status is equal to resource loader.thread load status dot, and you can see we have a lot of options here, by the way. We have failed, invalid resource, in progress, loaded. So generally speaking, we're going to want to use loaded here, but you could actually check for failed as well. If it failed, we might want to handle that. But I'll just say loaded, and we'll basically just say set process as false, which is going to stop this process from running. And we're going to set our progress bar value. So we'll just copy this guy right here, equal to 100. So that way it is fully set to 100. And we basically have an option here. If we want our level to load immediately without waiting for input, we can basically just run change scene right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to export out, just for you guys, I'm going to export out a public bool wait for input. And I'm going to default that equal to true, actually. That way we have a actual exported value out for us to use. And I'll come down here and I'll just say if wait for input, then we will do our wait for input. Now, we also need, if we're going to do a wait for input, then we need to actually make sure that we have some kind of input key. So we can just say wait for input key, or maybe wait for input as well. So we'll say private bool waiting for input, like that. And we'll come down here and just say waiting for input is equal to true. Else, we're just going to change our scene like that. And we need to pass in our packed scene, and our packed scene will basically be our resource loader dot load threaded get, and we will just pass in our path like that. It is a little mad at me, and I think it's because it cannot convert Godot resource to packed scene. So we'll just say as packed scene, and that will handle that. So basically what this is going to do is we're going to say, if we are waiting for input, then we will set waiting for input equal to true. Else, we're going to just change our scene. We're not going to wait for our user. We'll just immediately load that level. And now we basically just need to set up our waiting for input. So we'll come down here and we'll just do this by using the Godot input system. So we'll say public override void underscore input at input event. Okay. And we'll just check if we're waiting for input. And if we are, then we'll just check if our at event is an input event key like that. And if it is an input event key, then we know that we actually pressed a key. So we'll cast our event as an input key event. So we'll say input key event or event key. Key is equal to input event key add event. And we'll just check if our key dot pressed, then we can basically just change our scene, and we'll just copy this bit of code up here. So we'll just copy this guy, providing I know how to copy code. There we go. And we'll just paste it down here. Now, this will actually result in a bug, and the bug's actually pretty simple. Basically, when we check if our key is pressed, if we are doing anything on the keyboard, like opening up a door or something like that and hitting E, this event's gonna fire, and it actually will just load our next level. So we actually need to basically wait a single frame before we allow ourselves to actually load our level. So what we'll do is we'll actually come up here and we're just going to make a Boolean. So we'll say private bool input key pressed like that. And we'll scroll down here and we'll basically just say if input key pressed, then we'll load our scene and then we'll actually check for it. So if key dot pressed, then we can actually do our input key pressed is equal to, in our case, we'll say true, like that. Else, we'll just set it to false. And there we go. Now, in theory, this should all work, hopefully. So what we need to do is we need to build some kind of way to load our levels. So what we'll do is we'll build out a main menu that has a button that allows us to test our code. So we will go ahead and minimize this, and you'll see here's our loading screen. I'm going to go to scene, new scene. We'll go into a new user interface, and we're going to build out a quick main menu. Now, this should only take a few seconds, hopefully. So what we'll do is we'll right-click, add a child node. We're going to add in a button. We'll make it about, I don't know, this big, give or take. We'll put it right here, and we'll just put start game like that. We'll hit Control A, Control C. I'm going to double click that button. I'm going to say start game with no space. And then we're going to add in our loading scene.tscn, and I'm going to hide it. The reason why I'm hiding it is that way it doesn't show up until we need it. We'll go into our control. We'll double click on it. We'll name it main menu like that. We'll hit Control S. We'll save it as main menu. We'll right click, attach a script. Come over here and name it main menu.cs, and there we go. Now, we basically don't need any of this, at least for right now, but I think I'll actually keep it. I was going to delete it, but now I'm thinking about it. I don't know if I want to delete it just yet. And what we'll do is we'll intercept this event. So we'll go to our node, button down, and we'll connect the signal. I'm going to copy this guy, connect. I'm going to say private void, and I'm going to paste on start game button down. Now I'm basically just going to start my game. So I'll say get node, quote, start game, and we'll hit dot hide. We'll probably want to come back here later. And we'll need to type this. So we'll come in here and say button like that, dot hide. Like that. Now we'll probably have to come back here and make this a little bit smarter once we add in like our settings menu, our quit, things like that. But for right now, we'll just do it like this because it's simpler for this tutorial. Then we'll say get node. We're going to make that a type loading screen. So we'll come in here and we will name it loading screen like that. We'll hit dot. And in our case, we actually have a function that we already built for this called load level. So load level. And we'll have to pass in some kind of path. Now, in our case, we have a path right here. So now if I remember correctly, it's under levels, level 1 wake up. So we'll just come up here, Control A, Control C. We'll come back here and paste it in like that. Now you'll see that it might get a little upset with us. Let's see if it's okay. I think it'll be okay. I'm not sure why it's doing this highlight, but I think that that's just Godot being dumb. So we'll just kind of take it as is. If we have to, we can always do $, but I don't think we need to. So let's try that and let's see what that does. So if we go back to our level here and we hit play, you'll see it's going to build our project and hopefully everything builds correctly. And it did, so that's good. If we hit start game, you'll see it's loading level name, tip here. We have 100%, so it actually loaded as we expected. If we hit the spacebar, well, it breaks. So let's take a look at our debugger. Let's see what's going on. So we have a null reference object not set instance to a reference, and we have a loading screen 82. So let's double click on the 82, providing that it will open up Visual Studio, which it didn't, but I can go find it. So 82, we're going to be adding child current node right here. So my guess is that this got instantiated but got removed. So what if we come in here, Control X, and paste that guy down there? Let's try that and see what happens. So we'll refresh this guy. We'll hit start game, 100%. We'll hit spacebar, and it's still crapped out on us. So let's see what's going on. Object not reference to an instance of an object. So the question is it saying that root is not there, or is it saying that our current node is not there? So let's throw a breakpoint here, hit play. Let's take a look at this real quick. And you can see that my setup needs to be reset up. So we'll come in here, we will update this. There we go. And we'll need to change our default scene for this to work. So I'm going to come into here, project settings. I'm going to go into run, and I'm going to change this to my proper scene here. I'll hit stop, go back to here, hit play. Let's see what happens. It's going to throw me into here. I'm going to click start game, hit spacebar. You'll see that we have a pack scene. Our pack scene is correct as we expect. Our resource.load will step over. Our current node does exist. And then it throws our null reference exception. We know our current node is not null, so it must be that our root is null, which makes me wonder, somehow our root got null, which doesn't make any sense. So we'll say node n is equal to get tree root, like so. And then we're going to refresh this and take a look at this. I feel like something's wrong here. So we'll click spacebar, it's going to breakpoint, and root is null. So the question is if I come in here, is it destroying my root node? So we'll say var nodes is equal to this. Let me see if that's pulling back the wrong thing. So we're going to refresh this. We'll click, hit spacebar, nodes. Count is 1. We have a control node, so that should work just fine. So it's not null. That is interesting. If we head over to our main menu, we stop our project here inside of Visual Studio, like so. We come into here, we hit play. We look at our remote, we hit start game. Our root still technically exists. It's right here. So that should work. Let me take a look at this and I'm going to be right back. Okay, so I think I figured out what was going on. So basically we need to get a reference to our root node, and then we can come in here and actually add our child here. It seems to be an issue with the way that Godot C# handles references. So for some reason, it's coming back as null when you use your getTree.root because it doesn't have anything under it. So therefore the root basically gets culled, if that makes sense. So you need to keep a reference of it so that it doesn't get culled before you start adding stuff to it. And that's just something that I guess we'll have to keep in mind for the future. So if I hit play, you'll see if I drag this guy to the center, I hit start game, hit the spacebar, and there we go. We have our scene. Nice. Simple enough. So now, if we stop this, we need to have it so that we can show the actual level that we're loading. So if we look at this, we hit start game, you can see we have loading level name tip here. So let's hook that stuff up. So if we hit close, let's head over to our loading screen and actually come down to our load level. So we'll come into our load level. So before we get into our load level, let's come up to the top here and let's add in a list for us to do tips. So we'll go export as a Godot collections.array tips, and we will go from there. So basically what this will allow us to do is if we come into our loading screen here, we click build, it's going to build for us, and we head over to our loading screen. We click on our loading screen, you'll see that we have an array here. So we can actually add in an array of elements. So we can come in here and make it into a string like this, and we can actually set it right here. So we could say tip 1, tip 2, and tip 3, like that. If we head back into our horror game right here, into our code, we can come down here into our load level, and we can basically set up our tips. So we'll say if tips does not equal null, and if tips dot count does not equal 0, then we'll pull back a random tip. So we'll say get node, and I believe it's going to be a label, quote, and we'll have to get our node path. So if we slide this guy over, we can take a look at it. So we can go control/vbox container2/tip value, like that, dot text is equal to, and we'll need to make it set to one of our tips. Now, what we'll want to do is we'll want to do a random number. So what we'll do is we'll come in here, we'll say random R&D is equal to new random, and we'll say tips brackets R&D dot next this 1 comma tips dot count -1. And that should return a value. And actually, this should probably be 0. And we do have an error here. So let's take a look at it. It cannot implicitly convert a Godot variant to string. So I'll just say as string. And I don't think it's going to take that. So actually, we'll have to cast it with a hard cast. So we'll type string like that. And there we go. Now, hopefully that will work for our tips. Now, if we want to do our actual name of our level, we can do that as well. So down here, we'll just say string bracket bracket level name parts, and I need to do a capital N there, like that, is equal to our path dot split by that slash there. And then we're going to pull back the last element of that slash, and that'll get us our name of our level .tscn. But we don't necessarily want to have that dot in there either. So we're going to do another split. So we'll say string level name with extension, level name parts. We'll pull back the last element dot last dot split by period. And then we can just set it. So we'll just say get node label vbox container. So we'll just grab this, paste, slash, and I believe our path is level name. Like that. Quote dot text is equal to our level list with extension 0. And that should pull back our first element without our extension. So what we're doing here is we're basically taking a res :/test/test.tscn, and we're splitting it. Well, I don't like that it did reset size. There we go. So res :/test tscn, and then we're basically pulling back the last element. So level name parts last element. So we're pulling this guy back. We're splitting it based off of our dot. So now we just have these two guys. So we have this guy and this guy. And then we're pulling back our first element, which should just give us test, if that makes sense. So that's basically how we're approaching this. Now, if we hit Control S and we come in here and we go into our main menu, we hit play. In theory, this should work. So if we hit start game, you'll see it says loading level 1 wake up tip 1. if we close this and we try it again, let's see if we can get another tip. So hit start game, tip 2. So it's a completely random tip, and it allows us to have our level 1 wake up name right there. Awesome. So at this point, we have our level loading system pretty much done. But if we want to be able to load levels from in another level, we need to set that up. So let's go ahead and do that. So first, we're going to head over to our level 1 wake up here, and we'll take a look at our interactable objects. So we have a couple of interactable objects inside of our scene. You can see we have a child door, and inside this child door, it has a public partial class door node 3D interactable, and we're basically going to use that interactable interface to basically inform our other door that it is interactable. So we'll head over to our other door, door number 3 right here, and we're going to actually right click, add a child node. Let's add in a static body 3D. Let's right click, add in a child node, and add in a collision shape 3D. We're going to pull it out like so. And then we'll put our door inside of it. And then we're going to take our collision shape. We're going to make it into a box shape 3D like so. We will scale it to the proper size of our door. So we're going to drag this guy up. We're going to pull this in like so that it has some collision here. And we'll need to keep track of what our actual child door's collision layer is. So you can see it's 1 and 4. So we'll do the same thing for our static body 3D. So we'll say 1 and 4, and we will call this a load level door. And actually, I'll get rid of those spaces. That way I can stick with my camel case naming convention here. And then we'll right click this, attach a script, and we will call it a load level object. That way we actually have a load level object. Now, the reason why I'm doing it as object and not door is because if for some reason, like in Harry Potter, you want like a port key, or if you wanted like a grate or something like that, it's not a door, it's an object. So I'm going to go with object for mine, and we will hit create. Now, once we have this, we're basically just going to have it inherit from our interactable object like that. We're going to right click, quick actions refactoring, and we will implement our interface. Now we don't need get interface text. I don't believe that even works to begin with. So if I check, we do actually have a hover over text. So we'll just grab that as well. So we'll copy this guy so that way we have it for future use. So we'll come in here, we'll paste that, and we'll just have that section copied and pasted. And I know I'm just basically copying some code over, but I want to make sure that we maintain the same interaction that we have been maintaining. So we'll say return hover over text. And I believe we have an interact, and then we have a get sound. Now we don't need a get sound because we're not really going to be doing anything with that anyway. But with interact, we need to basically say, hey, when the user interacts with this, let's load a level. But we can't just say, okay, go load a level, right? We need some way to basically handle that. And this is where a game manager comes in. We don't actually have a game manager in our scene. So if you take a look at our solution explorer, we actually don't have a game manager script anywhere in here. So what that means is that we have to actually build one. Now, inside of Godot, generally when you do a game manager, you go into project settings, and you actually do an auto-loaded script. But since this is C#, you can get away without doing that at all. And how we're going to do it is we're going to hit close. And we're going to go back to our main menu. This is the menu that will always load at the beginning of the game. And what we'll do is we'll right click. We're going to add a child node, and we're going to add in a node. We're going to call this game manager. We'll right click it, attach a script, and we'll name it game manager.cs and hit create. And what we'll do is we'll say on ready, we're going to assign a public static game manager instance, and I'm going to make that a capital I. And then we'll just say if instance does not equals null, then instance is equal to this. Else, we're going to queue free like that. So basically, we're setting up our game manager instance right here. And then all we have to do is create a load level function. So public void load level. We're going to pass in a string path like that, preferably spelled correctly. And what we'll do is we'll say pack scene load scene is equal to resource loader dot load as a pack scene our actual loading screen. So if we head back to our horror game, we come down here, you can see we have it in our UI. So we'll just grab this guy, copy and paste it. Now, what we can do if we want to make this a little bit more extendable, we can come in here and just go bracket, export, and just say public string load scene, and we can just make that equal to that, like that, and that'll make it a little bit more extendable. So that way, if for some reason our path changes, we can always just use that. Now you can see it says that we cannot convert our argument from, well, that's because I have a capital L for load scene. There we go. And then we can instance it. So we'll just say loading screen loading is equal to load scene dot instance, like that, as a loading screen. And then we can basically just say get tree dot root dot add child loading. And then we can basically just say loading dot load level path. Now we might want to rename this, hit Control RR, and I think loading's a bad name. So let's just call it load scene node, like that. I think that'll give us a little bit, a bit better of a explanation of what it does. And then from here, we can just go to our door that we have, so our level loading object, and we could just say game manager dot manage dot instance dot load level, and we can pass in a path. Now we don't actually have a path set up just yet, so we'll export out a path. So we'll say export level to load, and we'll just grab this guy, copy it, and we will paste that in. And now if we head back to our project here, we click build. So we build our project, verify that everything's built correctly. If we head back over to our level 1 wake up and we hit Control S, you will see load level door, hover over text. We'll just say test for now, but we probably could just say go to level 1 wake up. And then for level 2 load, we can just pass in our path. So we'll head over to our level 1 wake up. So that is under, if I remember correctly, it's under levels, level 1 wake up. So we'll grab this, copy, and paste it in. And now if everything's been done correctly, if we head over to our main menu here, we hit play, start game, hit spacebar. We are in our game. We run forward like so. We hit E to interact, and we have an error right here. So let's take a look at it. Cannot access a disposed object. So my guess is that my object manager got disposed of here. And I think that that's because I didn't set it to a static, did I? No, I did. It's public static game manager instance. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do it the Godot way, as much as I don't want to. I'll just delete this guy. I'm going to go into project settings, and auto load the script. I think that'll probably just be easier than going through and causing some trouble. So we'll go ahead and just do that, hit close. And we should be able to just refresh this guy and try it now. So we'll hit start game, spacebar. We'll run in here like so, and we'll hit E, and you'll see that it is loading our level 1 wake up. Now you'll notice that A, we can still move around. B, it didn't query our queue free our stuff like we would expect. So my question is, why did it break on us? So it ran our loading screen like we would expect. I think I figured out what's going on, or at least an idea of what's going on. So if we come to our thing here, I'm going to set loading is equal to true down here. I'm going to set loading equal to true here. And to debug this, I'm going to come into my loading section and let's basically just throw a breakpoint here. Let's hit play. Let's load our level and let me actually kill this breakpoint real quick. Let me hit play. We're going to load our level. We're going to hit spacebar. We'll rethrow a breakpoint here. We'll come in here like so. We'll run over here. We'll hit E. And it looks like we have an invalid resource. So what we'll need to do is let's come in here and say else if status is equal to resource loader status invalid resource. And if it is an invalid resource, then let's attempt to kill our cache and reload it. So we'll grab this guy here and see if that helps. So we'll refresh and see if that fixes it. I don't know if it's going to or if it's not, but it's a good hope that that might fix it. So we'll hit play. We'll run over here. We'll come in here. We'll put a breakpoint. We'll hit E. It'll step in here and it'll attempt to load it. So we'll continue. And there we go. Okay. So basically, if we have an invalid resource, we just need to reload it. Now, something else that we need to look at is we can actually move our character when we're in a loading screen. And that's a problem because we don't want our character to be able to interact with anything. So let's actually fix that as well while we're here. So we'll go into our game manager. We'll come up here and we're basically just going to say public bool paused like that. And we'll basically say, hey, you know, if we're going to be loading anything, we're going to pause our game. So we'll say load level. We'll instance all the things. And then we'll just say game manager dot instance dot paused is equal to true like that. And then once we have that game manager instance dot paused, we'll just come into our player script. So we'll go to player.cs and we'll come down here to where I believe we have a section in our physics process here. I believe that's our only process node. And we'll just say if not game manager.instance.paused, then we will do all of this. And then we'll come down and we'll look for our mouse input, which is right here. And we'll basically come in here and just say if game manager.instance.paused, and we'll basically just put that like that. And actually we have to say not game manager instance paused like that. And that will basically do it for us. Now I'm going to go into my game manager. I'm going to change this to capital P paused because it is a public variable. So therefore it should maintain that naming convention. And now if we're lucky, we've done it correctly. So we'll hit play, hit start game, hit the space bar, and we are paused, which is good. That's what we wanted. But you'll notice that, well, we're paused. We can't do anything. So we have to make sure that we unpause our game once we've loaded our level. So we'll come into our loading screen. We'll copy our game manager pause is equal to true. We'll head up to where we do our change scene. And right after we add our current node, we will unpause our game. So we'll get refresh, hit start game, spacebar. We can interact and move. We'll run in here like this. We'll hit E. You'll see that we can't move our mouse. I'm actually moving my mouse. If I hit spacebar, the game loads. Awesome. So that's pretty much how you make a basic level loading system inside of Godot. So the nice thing about this is that it can be used for pretty much all of your level loading needs for pretty much any game that you ever have at this point. You could basically just use this and it will work for pretty much any type of game. Now, we do have some work to do here if we want to do level streaming, which if you guys want to see that, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to try to build something like that. If you want to do more of like an open world style game, that is a good thing to have. But in our case, this will work for our specific game. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, you know, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button because I'm here to make content for you guys. This video, as with all of my videos, was a viewer suggested video. So please, if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to add it to my list of videos to make. The list is extremely long, but I will get to them. I'm working on doing vaulting and sprinting and attacking and dodging for our 3D character controller. I'm working on doing a crafting system for our horror game, and I'm working on some Godot networking stuff as well. So look forward to all of that. But if there's anything else that you guys want covered, please let me know. I'm always here for you guys. And hey, if you guys have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments below or jump on my Discord. Link is in the description. And either I will help you or anybody in the Discord is always willing to help you out with your problems. But that is all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.